Okay, so if you think you know the great legends of Middle-earth, Beren and Lúthien, the Fall of Gondolin, well, maybe you haven't seen the blueprint. Today, we're really taking a deep dive, digging right into J.R.R. Tolkien's earliest works. The really raw, sometimes chaotic, often quite strange stuff collected in the Book of Lost Tales.
Yeah, it's like literary archaeology, honestly. We're not just looking at, first drafts. It's more like a whole different mythological engine that was running Tolkien's imagination early on. The names, the races, even the shape of the world, it all shifts, sometimes dramatically, before we get to the versions most people know from the Silmarillion.
So our mission today is really to uncover that original DNA, you could say, the startling early ideas in these epic stories, and maybe figure out what these wilder choices tell us about, well, what Tolkien was trying to do with the mythology back then. And we should probably start with the fraying story itself, right? The way these tales are presented. There's this human wanderer who hears it all. Ariel.
Exactly, Ariel. And the frame story is really key for context. These aren't just presented as, like, historical facts. They're lore being passed down. Ariel is this human mariner, a man whose mother actually died in a cruel and hungry siege. Really grim detail there. Anyway, he escapes across the Western Sea and somehow ends up on the lonely isle Tal'Daresia, and he's staying with the elves in their city, Cortirion.
So he's kind of the original audience, the filter for us.
In a way, yeah, he's the conduit. And the world he lives in, it's still deeply magical, a place where a man can just stumble into the land of the elves. He's like our stand-in listener, getting all this raw, potent lore before the world maybe became less attuned to that kind of magic.
Okay, and the tales he's hearing. They're full of some pretty wild, unexpected stuff, starting with maybe the most famous love story of the First Age.
Oh, definitely. Beren and Tinúviel. Let's dig into the earliest version we have of that one from around 1917. It's called The Tale of Tinúviel, but the subtitle is great. The Cat, the Gnome, and the Great Quest.
The Cat and the Gnome. Okay, right away, that's different. So Beren's identity, that's the first major shock.
It's a complete game changer for the narrative. In this version, Beren wasn't a man, not at all. He was a gnome, one of the Noldalies. And just to clarify for everyone listening, when Tolkien used gnome back then, he meant the elves we now mostly call the Noldor, specifically the ones who'd known slavery under Melko, the original Morgoth.
Wow, okay, so Beren isn't this heroic mortal guy defying fate for love. He's a suffering elf from a kindred with a dark past. That changes the whole feel of his quest for the Silmar.
Completely. And then there's the villain he has to face. This might be the biggest tonal shift. Forget Sauron the Necromancer.
So is it?
The original big bad of this quest was Tevildo, Prince of Cats.
Prince of Cats. Seriously, that sounds almost like a fairy tale, like something out of Perrault, not Middle-earth.
Exactly. It has that older, maybe slightly more whimsical, but still sinister fairy tale vibe. He's described as snarling. He has his own cat things, like this one called Oikoroi.
Cat things, okay. And he has a hobby.
Yeah, a pretty nasty one. He keeps these very wild, evil, and magic kind of mice, bigger than rats, just for his own amusement, his private sport. The imagery's so different, isn't it? It makes the whole conflict feel less cosmic, maybe, more personal, cruel, darkly fantastic, rather than the epic struggle against Sauron we know later.
Why do you think he shifted away from that, from Tevildo, this sort of mythological animal lord, to someone like Sauron?
That's a great question. It feels like a move away from that primal, almost bestial kind of evil towards something more psychological or systematic. Tevildo is that capricious, almost gothic menace of the dark fairy world. Sauron becomes about tyranny, deception, control, necromancy, much more abstract in a way.
And the Lost Tales version being so rooted in the animal kingdom that plays out in the quest itself.
Oh, absolutely. Beren, the gnome, he has to disguise himself, but not as, a wandering minstrel or something. He wears the actual skin of the cat, Oikoroi, and Tinúviel has to coach him in feline behavior.
I cannot get that image out of my head. Beren trying to act like a cat.
It's pretty wild.
And Tinúviel herself, when she faces the great wolf, Karkar's Knifefang.
She uses her magic, but it's described as a misty, dark garment that casts a spell of sleep. Not the bat disguise that comes later. It's all slightly different, more focused on inherent magic.
And the setting, too. Doriath wasn't Doriath yet.
Right. It was Artenor, the halls of King Tinwillant, that's the early Thingol, and they were hidden by the magic of Gwendoling the Fae. She's the prototype for Melian, the Maya. So the names are different, bouncing around, but that core idea of a magically shielded elven kingdom, that's there from early on.
Okay, so they go on the quest, Beren in his cat suit. What about the end? They get the Silmaril, Karkar's bites off the hand with the gem.
Yeah.
Does that part stay the same?
That part is pretty similar, yes. Karkaris bites off Beren's hand, gem and all. But what happens next is where this early version takes a really radical turn.
How so?
Well, in this telling, they both just die quickly. From sorrow or grief, maybe from Karkaris' attack combined with grief. It's tragic.
There must be more.
There is. The intervention comes from Mandos, the god of the dead, one of the Valar. And Tinúviel's beauty, her sorrow, it moves him deeply, to the point where he does something completely unprecedented. He shows mercy, which is not really his known role later on.
He brings them back.
He grants them a return to the living world, yes, a unique instance. But there's a huge cost. He makes them mortal even as men.
Whoa, so it's not Lúthien choosing mortality, like in the published Silmarillion. It's a judgment, a condition imposed on them.
Exactly. It's imposed by this deeply moved, almost rule-breaking divine power. It reframes the whole idea of their fate. Mortality isn't a choice born purely of love here. It's more like a tragic gift, maybe a consequence handed down by a god who's been swayed against his nature.
That suggests a different kind of pantheon back then, maybe.
Yeah.
More volatile, more Greek god-like almost.
Perhaps, yeah. More responsive, more capable of breaking their own rules when deeply moved. It's fascinating.
Okay, if a gnome disguised as a cat fighting the Prince of Cats wasn't wild enough, let's shift gears to another epic tragedy. The Fall of Gondolin. How did that look in these early drafts? Still epic.
Oh, absolutely epic. Maybe even more so in some ways. The heroism feels almost overwhelming. Even the city itself, Turgon's hidden city, it has all these glorious names piled on. Gondobar, Gondoth Limbar, Gondolin the Stone of Song, and Lothengriel, which means the flowery that blooms on the plain. Just beautiful.
And the central figures, Tor the man and Idril the elf princess. Irildi, she's called here.
Yes, Irilde. Their union is highlighted as incredibly important. The text calls it the first but not the last marriage between man and elf. But then it makes this very specific, slightly confusing claim about their son, Arundel, that he is the only being that is half of the kindred of the Eldali and half of men.
Okay. So Tolkien was already wrestling with the whole half-elven thing, how unique that lineage was meant to be.
Seems like it. And Tor himself, the human hero carrying the city's fate. He arrives guided first by swans, then later by the Noldoli, the gnomes.
And his equipment sounds pretty legendary, too.
Totally. He gets gnome steel armor, a silver helm with swan wings linking back to his guides, and this great axe, Gramberleg. The name apparently meant something like its buffet stun and its edge clove all armor just crushes everything.
Okay, so the setup is epic. What about the attack itself? Melko's assault.
It's intense, industrial-scale destruction. Melko uses fire drakes, some bronze, some copper, some apparently made of pure flame. And get this, Balrogs rode on their backs.
Balrogs riding dragons,
Yeah.
like cavalry.
That's the image, yeah. And not just a few Balrogs, like we might think of later. The text implies hundreds. It suggests this overwhelming, almost unbelievable scale of force thrown against the city.
Okay, hundreds of Balrogs riding fire drakes. That's a lot. So the elven heroes, they must have performed some incredible feats to even stand against that.
Exactly. Their valor has to be cranked up to 11 just to make sense of the battle. We hear about Rog of the Hammer of Wrath defending the gates, a classic heroic stand. Then you have Ithilien of the Fountain. He's noted for his musical skill, interestingly. But in battle, he slays 3 Balrogs with his sword.
3 Balrogs.
Yeah.
By himself.
Yeah. Before his final iconic act,
Which is?
he confronts Gothmog, the Lord of Balrogs. In this early text, gives Gothmog a specific parentage. He's the son of Melko himself and an ogress named Fluithwin.
Son of Melko.
Right, so Ithilien fights Gothmog, this demonic prince, and they end up killing each other, locked together, drowning in the king's fountain in the city square. Just an incredible image.
So Ithilien kills 3 Balrogs, then takes down Gothmog, and Glorfindel, the golden-haired elf.
Glorfindel of the Golden Flower, yeah.
Yeah.
Described as the best beloved after Ithilien. He also slays a Balrog. This happens while he's covering the escape route through the mountains in the Cristorn, the Eagle's Cleft.
Okay, hold on. Ithilien takes down 3 plus Gothmog. Glorfindel gets 1. Tor himself, with that axe Dramberleg, is credited with felling 5 Balrogs. It's like 10 Balrogs minimum taken out by named heroes. What does that say about how powerful these early elves were compared to later versions, where killing even 1 Balrog is this monumental, often self-sacrificial act?
It says they were conceived as beings of immense, almost demigod-like power in these first versions, much closer, perhaps, to the Mayor, the angelic spirits like Balrogs or Sauron in sheer combat ability. They could meet these powerful foes in single combat and actually win repeatedly. It seems as the mythology developed, Tolkien deliberately scaled back that raw power, maybe to make them feel more vulnerable, more tragic, to raise the stakes in a different way.
Makes sense. It makes the later fights, like Gandalf versus Durin's Bane, feel unique precisely because it's so rare and costly.
Exactly.
And amidst all this insane epic violence, you have the child, Arundel, and there's that detail about him not liking Meglin the traitor.
Yeah, it's such a human touch, isn't it? He dislikes Meglin because Meglin would set arms about my mother. Just a child's possessiveness and intuition. And it mentions he preferred the flute music of Ecthelion, the hero who just died spectacularly. It grounds all that cosmic chaos in something relatable.
It really does. Okay, let's move to the last of the three great tales. Turin Turambar, the ultimate tragedy. How does that look in its earliest forms?
The core elements are there. Turin, the black sword called Gurtholfin here, before it becomes Gurthang, his sister Ninori, or Ninjal, trapped by a spell of forgetfulness.
Right, the dragon spell. And the confrontation with the dragon Glorund, or Foloki, is that another name?
Yes, Glorin or Foloki. Turin slays him. A huge feat, of course. But there's a specific, terrible detail in this early version about the dragon's blood.
What happens?
As Glorund is dying, his venomous black blood spurts out onto Turin's hand, and it burns and withers it. A physical mark of the curse, perhaps.
Ouch. And then the dragon lifts the spell from Ninori with his dying breath.
Exactly. Tells her the horrifying truth that Turin is her brother. And in despair, she throws herself over the falls of Silverbowl. Turin then finds her body and falls upon his own sword. Classic tragedy.
Grim.
But
You mentioned radical differences. Does something happen after their deaths in this version?
Yes, and this is probably the single most astonishing departure from the later Legendarium. The sources talk about a kind of, well, deification?
Deification, like they become gods.
Something very close to it. It says Turin and Ninori are purified in a place called Fos Almir, the Bath of Flame, and afterward they dwelt as shining Valar among the Blessed Ones.
They become Valar. They join the powers, the gods who rule the world, a mortal man and woman.
That's what the text implies. They don't just find peace in the halls of Mandos. They are elevated to divine, or at least semi-divine, status.
That's huge. What does that even mean for the cosmology Tolkien was building then?
It suggests that even the most terrible fate wasn't necessarily final. That exceptional suffering and heroism, perhaps, could lead to an almost unbelievable level of cosmic redemption or reward. And it has consequences for the future, too. There's a prophecy mentioned. Turin is destined to stand beside Fionwe, that's Eonwe, Manwë's herald in the Great Rack, the final battle against Melko.
So the guy cursed by fate becomes a key player in the apocalypse, fighting alongside the angelic host.
Precisely. He goes from tragic mortal victim to a cosmic champion. It's an incredible arc that was completely written out later.
Wow. Okay, this idea of mortal heroes achieving divinity.
Yeah.
It really changes the perspective. But it also brings us back to that question. Why was Tolkien writing all this? Who was it for originally?
And that leads us back to Ariel, the listener. Elfwine, another name he has. And this is where we hit maybe the most surprising geographical connection in the entire Lost Tales.
More surprising than Beren the Gnome Cat.
I think so. It connects directly to, well, to England.
Wait, what? How?
The text suggests that Tol Eressëa, the lonely isle where the elves live and where Ariel hears these tales, was originally intended to be England, or to become England.
You're kidding. The Elven Island Refuge is England. In our world.
That seems to be the original concept. There's this idea that the island would be drawn across the sea, physically moved by Uin, this giant whale, and it would eventually settle and become England, or Lúthien, another old name for Britain used here, and even more specifically, the elven city of Cortirion, where Ariel is staying. It's identified explicitly with Warwick.
Warwick. So Tolkien's entire vast mythology was initially framed as the secret, forgotten ancient history of Warwick, England.
That appears to be the astonishing initial plan. It wasn't just inspired by England, it was England's lost fairy history.
That is a mind-bending revision, going from this magical island as our home to later completely separating Middle-earth from any modern geography. Why do you think he abandoned that? It's such a powerful national myth concept.
It's hard to say for sure, but perhaps he felt it was too limiting, too specific. Tying these grand cosmic myths so directly to one modern country, one town like Warwick, might have felt like it shrunk them somehow. Maybe he wanted them to feel more ancient, more universal, less like a hidden local history, and more like the deep roots of all human myth. Moving away from Warwick was maybe a move towards timelessness.
And this whole idea is tied up with how elves and men interact over time, right? The fading of the elves.
Yes, and it's portrayed in a really poignant, almost tragic way here. The sources explain that as men become more powerful and numerous, the elves fade. They literally diminish. They become small and tenuous, filmy and transparent, until men eventually just can't see them anymore.
So they don't necessarily sail away, they just become imperceptible to us.
That's the implication. And conversely, men grow larger and more dense and gross.
Gross, like physically bigger and coarser.
Yeah, but maybe gross also means less sensitive, more materialistic. As our world advances, becomes more scientific, more real in a mundane sense, the magic literally shrinks from our view. We become too gross to perceive it.
That's a heartbreaking idea.
Yeah.
The cost of modernity is losing sight of enchantment.
Yeah.
The elves didn't leave, we changed.
It's a powerful theme, and it all culminates in this prophecy about the very end of the world, the last battle, the Great Rack.
What's the prophecy?
The elves apparently held this belief or hope that if men eventually aided them in a final confrontation with Melko, it could lead to something amazing. The rekindling of the magic sun, which seems to mean restoring the two trees of Valinor, the original light source of the world, and crucially the opening of Valinor, the undying lands, to everyone, including men.
Universal access to paradise.
Pretty much. And the ultimate payoff, if this alliance succeeded, Mandos be emptied.
Emptied, the holes of the dead, cleared out. Everyone comes back.
Universal resurrection, that seems to be the incredible promise hinted at in these earliest texts.
Wow. Okay, that really underscores the value of digging into these lost tales, doesn't it? They're not just rough drafts. They're exploring these huge, high-stakes cosmological ideas.
Absolutely. They show the sheer imaginative power bubbling up, how details we think are minor now, like Beren being a gnome, or Tevildo the cat, or Warwick being Cortirian, were actually central to this earlier version of the cosmic struggle, a version that included deified heroes and the potential for universal resurrection.
It makes you realize that the final famous versions we know, they really only hint at some of this wilder, earlier potential. The tragedy feels different, the triumphs feel different.
Definitely. That potential for mortal deification, for universal renewal, it's mostly lost in the later, perhaps more somber versions.
So it leaves you wondering, doesn't it? What exactly was the hidden cost when the elves faded, when men became more powerful and, well, gross? And what did we as a world lose when we perhaps lost the ability to see the magic that Tolkien initially imagined might be right here, in places like Warwick?
That's definitely something to chew on until our next deep dive.